All eyes on Rafah. Wait, Trump has been found guilty. All eyes off Rafah. That and more on this week's America Uncovered headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. Let's start off with our apparently weekly edition of Really, California? Really? An 81-year-old serial slingshot shooter was arrested in Los Angeles. The man spent almost a decade shooting his slingshot at house and car windows as well as people in his neighborhood. Wow, after all this time, Dennis is still a menace. And yes, I went with a Dennis the Menace reference because the next most famous slingshotter before him was David slaying Goliath, which you can read all about in the God Bless the USA Bible, the only Bible endorsed by former President Donald Trump, still actually on sale. Which may surprise you because Trump was found guilty on all counts in his hush money case, which was an absolute dumpster fire. But more on that later in the episode. I want to give you something to look forward to. Speaking of situations that are basically just flaming poop piles, the Israel-Hamas conflict. I don't do this often, but we're going to need a preemptive America Uncovered mental health break for this one. Oh, just look at them scampering around, not a care in the world. Specifically, one part of the world seeing massive civilian casualties. Aww. Israel launched an attack on the southern Gaza city of Rafah, killing 2 senior Hamas commanders. However, the attack started a fire that killed 45 people sheltering in a tent camp. And even better, experts say Israel used a US-made bomb in the attack. Ooh, not a good look, especially with the eyes of the world on Israel, a world which incidentally immediately denounced the strike. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called this a tragic mishap.
קרתה לצערנו אמש תקלה טרגית. אנחנו חוקרים את המקרה, אנחנו נסיק את המסקנות, כי זו המדיניות שלנו. כל בלתי מעורב שנפגע זה טרגדיה. אצל חמאס זו אסטרטגיה. זה כל ההבדל.
Sadly, he's right. This kind of mishap is a tragedy, but not as far as Hamas is concerned. They don't care about the well-being of Palestinian civilians. They have been condemned for constantly using them as human shields. Hamas wants Israel to kill Palestinian civilians because the inevitable backlash against Israel only helps Hamas. So for any student protesters feeling the urge to defend or even support Hamas, maybe don't? Meanwhile, speaking of student protesters, Time reports that anti-Semitism has been on the rise since Israel launched their campaign after the October 7th massacre, especially among young Americans. This has particularly been seen at university protests, and this recent attack on Rafah will only further inflame these protests. However, the rise in anti-Semitism may not actually be true. A recent Harvard-Harris poll showed most Americans support Israel and hold an unfavorable view of Hamas. A strong majority of voters continue to support Israel in the conflict, and 2/3 feel Israel is trying to minimize casualties. A strong majority of voters thought Israel should move forward on the operation in Rafah to finish the war. Now maybe that will change after the reality of the strike. Israel continues to press into Rafah, where they believe Hamas commanders are hiding among thousands of Gaza's citizens, using them as human shields. But on the bright side, scientists are hopeful that CBD can help treat pets' arthritis, allergies, and anxiety. And if you're wondering what that has to do with the Israel-Hamas conflict, absolutely nothing. But after all that doom and gloom we just covered, I'm hopeful that this new discovery will mean more comfortable joints and less terror on 4th of July for those cute, cuddly little guys. Oh, that's better. Sorry, sometimes the cruelty of man can get to me. Thankfully, I can rest easy knowing that nature herself isn't so chaotic and unforgiving. 24 people were killed over Memorial Day weekend by storms that devastated several U.S. states. Can't I even get a 30-second break without the horrors of reality sledgehammering me in the face with reminders of my fragile mortality? Come on, as if we needed any more death than we usually get on Memorial Day. Those caused by excessive dehydration due to people contracting the meat sweats, the most delicious and patriotic way to die in America. Speaking of things dying in America, abortion! I know, finally, a lighthearted story. Louisiana has become the first state to classify abortion pills as controlled substances, which is kind of weird because controlled substances are typically drugs that are addictive or abused. I don't think anyone's addicted to abortion pills. I've never heard of a story of a young woman turning tricks to afford abortion pills and purposely getting pregnant while turning these tricks so they can get out and get more. If you think that was dark, you're welcome, because it hopefully took your mind off how dark the Israel-Hamas conflict is. At least until I just reminded you about it. Hey, look, more puppies! It's been a rough week. After the break, Hillary Clinton blames someone new for her loss in 2016. Welcome back. If you think the 2024 presidential election cycle is long, well, just wait, because it would seem the 2016 election still isn't over. At least, not for Hillary Clinton, who now says women are to blame for her loss to Donald Trump. She said about the women who didn't vote for her, "They left me because they just couldn't take a risk on me because as a woman, I'm supposed to be perfect. They were willing to take a risk on Trump, who had a long list of, let's call them, flaws, to illustrate his imperfection because he was a man and they could envision a man as president and commander-in-chief. Man, pun intended. First it was Bernie bros, now it's women. Who else is she going to blame before she looks in the mirror and admits she ran a horrible campaign? The only time anyone said Hillary is killing it on the campaign trail were allegations about a murdered Democratic staffer. I'm not suicidal, by the way. Don't know why I brought that up. Speaking of presidential campaigns, the Libertarian Party has nominated Chase Oliver as their presidential candidate, leading to resounding, earth-shattering cries of, "Who?" Oliver is a political activist who left the Democratic Party due to his anti-war views. He also once called for an open border as the best way to help the open market, because the semi-open border is working out so well for America right now. So well, in fact, that New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who previously said that the asylum seeker crisis will destroy New York City, is now suggesting hiring illegal immigrants to help ease the city's lifeguard shortage because, and I can't stress this strongly enough, that he's saying this and not me, many of them are excellent swimmers. Special Counsel Jack Smith requested a gag order to be placed on Donald Trump in his upcoming classified documents case, because implementing a gag order in his so-called hush money case worked out so well, Trump kept quiet the entire trial, plus or minus 10 times. Putting a gag order on Trump only helps him. Paying $1,000 per violation is nothing to him. And if he gets thrown in jail, a new mugshot would only help him in the polls, just like the last one did. The only real question is, what expression would he go for? Angry again? Sultry and smoldering like blue steel? Or would it be like a graduation photo shoot where you do one serious and one goofy? Speaking of Trump trials, we finally get to it. Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts in his so-called hush money trial, making him the first former U.S. president in history to be convicted of a felony, paving the way for the stunning comeback of America Uncovered's presidential pick, Chris Christie. He's not a felon. As you can imagine, Trump handled the verdict with quiet acceptance, careful to uphold the sanctity of the U.S. legal system.
This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt.
So why are Trump and many others attacking the judge in this case? Well, there's more than one issue, but here's the latest one. Judge Juan Merchan gave the jurors 55 pages worth of instructions before they adjourned for deliberations. According to some tweets, he told the jurors that they didn't need to agree on what crime Trump committed, which seemed pretty fishy to people since jury convictions require a unanimous verdict. And this made it sound like the judge said it didn't have to be unanimous at all. Well, this set off a slew of outrage and confusing headlines, and lots of accusations of a rigged trial. But wait, is that true? Guess what? It's complicated. Bet you totally saw that one coming. Okay, let's dig in, people. The jury did need to be unanimous, as in 12 out of 12 in their decision to convict Trump. What was Trump actually charged with? Well, that's the confusing part. So the basics are that during the 2016 presidential campaign, Trump's then lawyer, Michael Cohen, paid Stormy Daniels hush money to not talk about how she had an affair with Donald Trump. When Trump reimbursed Cohen, the money was categorized as legal fees, which it was not. So, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg charged Trump with falsifying business records. So, it's not the paying the hush money that was the crime. It was not labeling it as hush money. But in New York State, falsifying business records is not a felony unless Trump falsified business records in order to commit or conceal a second crime. What's the second crime? Bragg eventually argued that Trump violated an obscure state election law. That law makes it illegal to promote or prevent the election of any person to a public office by unlawful means. So, somewhat ironically, the prosecutors were accusing Trump of trying to rig the 2016 election. And that's why he was covering up his hush money payments to Stormy Daniels. But hold on. Because for Trump to have actually broken that election law, prosecutors have to argue that Trump did something illegal to interfere with the election. That's the unlawful means. And here's where it gets really confusing. The judge gave the jurors a choice of 3 possible unlawful means that Trump had to have done in order to interfere with the election. Those are either violating federal campaign finance laws or falsifying other business records. Not the Michael Cohen hush money ones, but other ones. Or violating tax laws by putting false information on tax forms. Each juror had to believe that Trump did at least one of these 3 things, but they didn't have to agree on which one he did. That's the part that people were tweeting about incorrectly. But I can't really blame them because what I just explained to you was not something you could cover in a tweet. It's a PhD dissertation. So to recap, in order to convict Trump, jurors had to unanimously agree that he falsified business records in order to conceal that he was breaking the law to interfere in the 2016 election. They just didn't have to agree on how he broke the law to interfere in the election, which was not the crime he was actually on trial for. Turns out the American legal system is more complicated than how they make it look on Suits, where every case is won by looking at a box of documents and saying, wait, I think we've got something here. There were a lot of dicey things about this case from the very beginning, like the fact that Trump could be found guilty for just causing the business records to be falsified. He didn't have to do it himself or even explicitly order it to be done. Or the fact that DA Bragg apparently pushed his prosecutors to scour the penal code for a secondary crime that would make this a felony. That's when they eventually found what the New York Times called an obscure state election law. And the Times also called it a novel and untested theory, because the DA was trying to apply a state election law to a federal election. All this really makes it seem like, well, a rigged trial. It reads like instead of starting with a known crime and trying to prove that Trump committed it, DA Alvin Bragg was starting with Donald Trump and searching for a crime to pin on him. Which is why even people who aren't big fans of Trump think this trial was politically motivated. You have to admit certain things don't help that perception, like Trump being scheduled for sentencing on July 11th, just 4 days before the GOP convention. But I'm sure that this case and all these other trials against Trump that are seemingly being rushed are all just coincidences. Trump deserves what every lawfully convicted criminal in New York City gets: his immediate release back onto the streets. A lot of people had strong opinions about this trial, and a lot of them were flat out wrong. Why do people who know the least know it the loudest? Well, that's what I talk about in the latest episode of my new show, Deep Thoughts While Gaming. Click here and let me know what you think. America Uncovered wouldn't exist without your support. Click that orange button to support the show on Patreon. All it takes is $1 an episode, and you can set a monthly limit. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.